Hi, Freddie.
Hello, Sam.
How you doing?
Very well, thank you. How are you?
I'm very good. Thank you for coming down. For everybody watching, please introduce yourself and why are you here?
I'm Freddie. I'm the founder of a company called Recognized, and I'm also a podcaster of my own podcast called the Healthy Entrepreneur Podcast. And I'm here to have a chat with you really about what it is that I'm up to, but to understand a bit more about you. And I followed the podcast for a while, and I think it's such a cool format to understand what makes humanity.
You're here to find more out about me.
I'm going to ask you about your podcast the whole way through.
Oh, wow, so I've never been more nervous on Tasty Humans ever.
Why did you start the podcast?
Why did I start the podcast? So I could have brilliant people like you on.
Okay.
No, I tell you what, no problem. Why did I start it? I started Tasty Humans. I can't believe this is happening. This has never happened before. I feel really on the spot. I started Tasty Humans because somebody asked me when I worked in a hotel, did I want to start a podcast? I thought, yeah, I'd like to do something like that. I then got sent a number of links about other hotels' podcasts. I watched 3 of them, and I said, not a chance am I doing anything like that. I found them to be too scripted, curated, almost like a show. One of them was like, 3 ways to clean a bed. And I was like, yeah, not doing any of that. So I just thought, what can I do to be completely different? And then wrote a list of what everyone was not doing. So no edits, no scripts, no agendas, no nothing. And the original title was supposed to be The Humans of Hospitality.
Oh, nice. You did a pivot in the middle there.
Well, somebody said if you put hospitality in the title of the podcast, no one will listen to it.
That's fair.
Yeah. But anyway, let's keep it with you.
Well, we'll see.
Don't even know what to say next. No, so you know what? You are actually a very interesting character. I don't do tons of research. I suppose, sort of feeding into the question you've just asked me, I don't do tons of research because I don't like to know too much about somebody. But I do know that you have been in Dubai for 3 years, is that right?
That's correct, yeah.
And that you had a bit of a life-changing incident that made you come here. And what was that?
So in 2022, there's a long story before it in what I was doing and my upbringing, but in 2022, I was in a car crash, effectively. I was working as head of product for the world's largest digital publisher. I was working from home. It was obviously a couple of years after the dreaded pandemic. So we were renovating houses, and we're in this house just outside Bath in the UK. Nice bungalow, backed onto fields, nearly at the finish of the renovation. My fiancée is an award-winning interior designer, so she was putting all the finishing touches together. And I've been asked to become a trustee of a charity that we actually both know. One of your recent guests we just spoke about has done an amazing challenge for it recently. And I was just about to drive over on my lunch break to my father-in-law's house who was setting up the charity. And I decided that, it's a 5-minute drive. I was going to be 20 minutes there and back. I was just on the phone to my boss and I said, I'll be back in 25 minutes. We can continue our walking meeting, which is what we always used to do. Walking meetings to fulfill our creative sides. I'll come back and we'll finish our call. So I hopped in the car. I was going to bring the dog with me, and instead my fiancée Antonia said, I'll drive you because I want to see my dad. We'll leave the dog here. We had a 1-year-old or 2-year-old Labrador. Everyone bought a dog in lockdown, and we fell into that trap as well. Hopped in the car. She decided to drive, and within 2 minutes of leaving our house, we pulled onto a main road, and a car came around the corner, wrong side of the road, and hit us head on. It was a convertible car, white-haired, old guy. I can still see his face coming towards us, and I just had time to say, oh, watch out. Bang, head on. So we flipped upside down, rolled a couple of times, and we ended up upside down in a ditch. So in the UK, we have sort of V-shaped ditches. So you can imagine the car's upside down. It's completely pitch black because the ditch is covering all the sides of the car. And so I just remember sort of waking up and feeling, obviously, days ringing in my ears. I can just see smoke. I can hear screaming. And I turn to Antonia, and she's hanging upside down, just bleeding from her face. And I had this surge of adrenaline that you'll always hear about, but I've now experienced, where I just dragged her out of the car. We were sort of resting on an 8-foot hedge, and I pulled her up and out and over this hedge into a field. And luckily the car behind the one that had hit us was an off-duty doctor. So she ran up our car, up underside of our car, jumped over the hedge with a van driver who was following us and helped us immediately, which was amazing, because whilst we had no lasting injuries, obviously in that moment your heart rate's at 180 and Antonia was bleeding everywhere, and we were very much shocked. And that car crash was the perception change in my life that I needed. I was 27. We were taken, there was ambulances, police, fire engines, everything you could imagine to help us. But because our adrenaline was so high and we had no immediate injuries, they told us to go home. Not to go to our own house, but to go to someone else's house and stay there, because it's going to hurt in a few hours when your adrenaline wears off. We went back to our house to pick up some clothes, and it was like walking into a time warp, because we lived in a very safe part of the world. Maybe we're the naivety of youth as well. We had left our doors and our windows open. The TV was still on. There was a cup of tea still steaming away, and obviously our dog. And you walk into that room or that house, and it was like a time warp. I really felt like we should have died that day, and we shouldn't have seen that space again. And so we collected our clothes and went to Antonia's parents' house, and we had 2 weeks off work, going to A&E, physiotherapy, because we just couldn't sleep. There's lots of aches and pains. And in that 2 weeks, we spoke a lot about what happiness is and what we really wanted to do in our lives before we'd jumped onto the conveyor belt of university, the conveyor belt of corporate life. We tried a few things, little businesses, renovating houses, but we really wanted to have some more freedom. And by freedom at that time, all I meant was time freedom. And so 2 months later, we'd sold our house, quit our jobs, and we'd landed here in Dubai to start the entrepreneurial adventure, as it's turned out to be.
Mm-hmm. Fantastic. I wanted to ask you about the statement you just said about thinking that you should be dead, which, I always refer to it as jarring, which is where something happens in life that just shifts your focus, shifts your mindset, and it happens like this, you know what I mean? And I did want to ask you, what is it? Is it something that you still live with inside of you, where you feel that there has been this great second chance that was given to you almost, and that you almost have to continually respect it? Does it come back around and come back around and come back around, or was it like a shorter?
No, you're right. Process? It does come back around, but I haven't explained this before to anyone actually. It was not my first time of coming close to death.
Okay.
At 5 years old, I was given a 30% chance of survival. I had cancer as a 5-year-old boy. My parents had already had one daughter who lost her life within 2 days of being born, and then 5 years later, I'm ill, chronically ill, and I'm going to be, I've got a 30% chance of survival. So my entire life was primary school I was left out because I couldn't do things. Secondary school I was bullied because I was smaller. I was missing school because I was ill. And you recover that and you become all clear and you go on to be a 6'2" healthy guy with a master's degree, whatever. I'll be confident in what I've done since that. But then it took me until I was 27 to have another experience, and it really shook me up. I'd had this explained to me once before, you're lucky. Mm-hmm. So to have that happen again, it changes something, right? And I think the luckiest thing in my life was having that car crash.
Okay.
Because a lot of people wait until they're 65 and they have a heart attack, a stroke. They break their leg and they go, oh, I should really not have any regrets here. I should live my life. Well, I had 2 of those before the age of 30. And so you're right. It was a knee-jerker to remind myself of how important and fickle life is, but also I do still forget. There's still days where I'm frustrated with the business, or I've missed something, I've not executed something as well as I could, I'm not happy, and I would define happiness as quality of relationships and the peace that you are with yourself. Mm-hmm. And so sometimes when you're not happy, you just think, oh, what's the point? And that's when I have to remember, or Antonio actually is very good at being like, just remember what we've been through, especially what you've been through. And then it starts to go, okay, life is so much more important than perhaps you are taking it for right now.
That's crazy. How are your parents?
My parents have been through a lot. They've been through an awful lot. My dad they've both been lifelong police officers.
Okay.
30 years in the police. Vocation's everything to them.
Quick side question. How was that growing up?
Tough.
Yeah.
People aren't friends with people that have police officers' parents.
We've both had the same. We've had Sebastian Bates.
Yeah.
He's not going to mind me saying this because it's on the podcast, but he talks about his dad being in the military.
Yeah.
And a great thing that he said was when he was being bullied at school, and his dad came in full army uniform. I actually released this episode recently, and I've put it as a clip where his dad marches in full uniform and gives a big speech to all of the class and points everyone out. And he was like, I was mortified, and I was thinking, and I think it's very interesting as a child, you know, to grow up with parents that have a vocation that makes you unpopular, like.
Exactly, and my mum. So my dad would. He did lots of sort of riot training. He was in that sort of scene. But my mum was in. She specialised in training or teaching, I should say, kids. So she'd go into schools. Okay. So you imagine this: you've grown up with your parents being in the police. So people are like, "Oh, we shouldn't drink around this guy, whatever." And then your mum turns up in police uniform once every term, and she's teaching some class in the school of 1,000 kids about why it's an asp and not a stick, or how to use handcuffs, or what the criminal age is in the UK. Constantly people are talking about the police lady who's in, and it's your mum. So it was difficult. I mean, I'm so proud of them. They had amazing careers, and they've done something which I'm not really doing. I'm not putting other people completely first. I've still got a business. I've got to make money, be profitable for what we're doing. They are literally putting their lives on the line to help society.
And I think, sorry, how old are you?
I'm 30.
30. Okay, cool. So I'm 19 years older than you. Okay. So what I would say as well, because I always have to sort of slap myself in the face during these processes and realize that we weren't at school at the same time.
Sure.
So I think, and this is definitely something I definitely say directly to your parents, is that being a police officer in the last 20 years has just got tougher and tougher and shittier, because I used to do nightlife. I used to run clubs and bars and everything like this. And I used to think the way that law has changed towards certain things in the UK over the last sort of 15, 20 years, and I'm not trying to segue into anything political, it's just observational, which is they took away breach of the peace and stuff like this, so you can't just arrest someone for standing at the front door of a nightclub and hurling abuse at people. And I just used to think that you're in such a difficult position.
Totally.
I mean,
totally. And then, so my dad,
so props to them. Do you know what I mean?
My dad was a paramedic on their ambulance before he joined the police. And so not only is it exactly what you're talking about there, the sort of legislative side of things, but also the stuff that they've seen. So my dad in particular, some of the stories that he's got of, he turned up to a bus crash near where we lived, 50 Italian foreign exchange students. The bus had turned over, they're all dead. And he's the first one on the scene. Or he was working as a liaison officer between a family and the courts because their son had killed the parents by slashing them with knives, and he was one of the first people there. You don't really understand, or I don't understand, what people have been through. And it's your own parents, and then they've got to deal with the loss of a first child, me being ill, obviously 20 years later, a car crash. There's a lot to process there, and so they've retired in the last 5 or 10 years, and they now live on the coast in Devon in the south of the UK, and they just deserve it. They deserve to be happy because they've been through a lot, and I think a lot of people don't understand, or no one understands what other people are going through, what they're thinking. No. And I think this conversation now, you just start to understand what people are going through,
Yeah, I think, there's a big grey area, I think, around, because obviously I've spoke to, I think you're number 85 now. And the thing that I've learned in this process is that the term everybody is living inside their own heads is so true. So you can be, you can be a heavily abused child that's parents are smackheads and has not got a chance in life, and that must be terrible. But also, you could be a trust fund kid, right, who appears that the world has been laid out for them. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. And that money is no object, and look what parents did and everything like that. But inside their heads, they're having just as big a disaster because everything's relative to everyone's own personal perceptions. They could be living with, how do I live up to my parents' expectations? What is it like? I've got no sense of reality. Like, nothing has any value. I don't have to work for anything. You know what I mean? So on my 18th birthday, I got a Lamborghini. Yeah. But I think, oh, you lucky bugger. Do you know what I mean? When really they're just like, well, this doesn't have any what has meaning.
Yeah. Well, it's very common to say that the adventure and the happiness is in the pursuit, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's in the journey. And if you've got nothing to work towards, I saw a really good video a couple of days ago. I forget who it's from, someone like Dan Priestley or Alex Hormozy, where he's literally talking about you won't be happy if you're looking for material stuff. You have to be looking for something bigger. And if you don't do that, A, you won't be successful, and B, you'll never be happy.
Yeah.
But you have to have something, a vision or a mission or something bigger than a Lambo or whatever. Because if you do achieve that, you'll realize very quickly it's not actually what you thought it was.
Will Smith, who has gone off a cliff. Do you know what I mean?
Big time.
And the thing is, again, coming from my era, you know, Will Smith, I think, was one of the most highly respected entertainers, you know. And obviously, but going to the thing that he said recently, though, that I thought actually made a bit of sense was, I think he called it cliff top, which is the opposite of rock bottom. And he said, I'd reached the cliff top where I've won Oscars, I've had #1 albums, I've achieved everything I wanted to achieve in my field. I've got inordinate amounts of money. I can go anywhere, I can do anything. And he goes, and I'm empty because I've achieved, it's bizarre. And it was like, I don't know, it was almost uncomfortable where you're like, oh, I don't know if I'd ever want that. Do you know what I mean?
I don't know if you've seen the Charlie Sheen documentary recently.
No, not yet.
It's very similar. But by his mid-20s, he had everything. Everyone loved him. He was rich beyond his dreams. And then look what happened. He abused substances because that was the only way he could find any sort of inner peace. Yeah. And I think you're completely right. I think you've just got to find some way of keeping yourself happy. And I defined it earlier, just quality relationships. For me, that's what it is. I think if you are around people who you love and they love you, I think that stimulates me as a person, at least. That makes me happy. I could have anything. You could live in the best city in the world. You have all the money in the world. Ultimately, I will always be unhappy if I don't have relationships around me that I trust and I love.
Well, I think human beings want to feel valued for who they are, you know, and I don't think people want to feel important. They just want to feel noticed. Relevant. And I think that's one thing that sort of, as you get older in life, but as you do, it's weird. Like, one of my favorite statements is, when you're 20 years old, you think everyone's watching you. You know, when you turn 40, you realize that you really don't care about that anymore. And you really don't. And then a friend of mine who's recently turned 60, he said to me, you got to realize that when you get to my age, you realize no one was ever watching you in the first place.
My parents are in their mid-60s. I've never seen anyone so happy. They completely agree. No one was ever looking. Nothing ever mattered. They're just happy with who they are and what they've got. I completely agree. I recently turned 30, and I think 30 for me I was scared of turning 30. There's a lot of societal pressure on turning 30, at least in my generation. Yeah. I don't think there is anymore because everything's being pushed back, but I was always brought up being like 30.
What do you mean by being pushed back? Sorry.
I think 40 is the new 30. So people that are now 15, they were being told by 30, married, kids, a house, business. I think now it's more like 35, 40. There's the number people are being told because we're living longer and stuff's harder to do. But I was always like, 30 is so scary. And then you realize you turn 30 and nothing changes. And in fact, it's more
I felt
fun.
really good about it. I remember being really scared at 29, thinking I'm going to get really old. And then I turned 30 and I felt young again. Yeah. For some bizarre reason.
It's like a reset. It's like New Year.
Yeah, but you feel like, you know, I'm 30. Like, I'm a man. You know what I mean? Like,
I'm going to grow a beard.
But I'm a young man, you know. Trust me, that doesn't happen at 40. At 40, I thought, okay, I'll turn 40, I'll be young again. And then 40 was shocking. Like, I was standing in a bathroom in Goa, looking in the mirror on the morning of my 40th birthday, reciting the words, "You're 40. You're 40." And I couldn't come to terms with it because inside I still thought I could play football for England.
Oh, yes.
You know, the mind doesn't get old. My dad used to say this. He was like 76. He was like, the mind doesn't get old. That's the most annoying thing. Yeah. The body loses function, but the mind is still going, you do all these things.
And what you're saying earlier about, you know, everyone's working it out. Like, everyone's trying to work this stuff out. Everyone's going through life for the first time. And we've both been able to speak to some amazing people on the podcast, you know, people that make millions, people that make billions, Olympic gold medalists, whatever, celebrities, quote unquote. And I saw Chris Williamson say something amazing on Mike Thurston's podcast. He was like, it's idiots all the way to the top. Yeah. Literally all the way to the top. No organization that I've been in, which is billion-pound organizations, ones that making hundreds of thousands of dollars a day. You know, anything you could think of, it's idiots the whole way up. It's just how you package it together, I guess, is what makes the difference between if it's going to work or if it's not. But I think the most important thing I try to remember is that we're all going through life for the first time. So if you make a mistake, it was your first time, you know?
Yeah, and I think that people are losing that. I don't know. I agree with you 100%, and I do think that two things that are being dumbed down. Actually, that's actually a complete lie. One thing is being dumbed down. The other thing is being overplayed. I think that resilience is being dumbed down, where it's like, oh, you had a tough time. Oh, sorry. Do you know what I mean? When it's like, I don't know. It's like if you've never been punched in the face.
Yeah.
Okay, I've been punched in the face a few times. Funny, I've never had a fight in the street or anything like that, but I used to box as a kid, and I've done a couple of things in my time, and I got hit for it, and I deserved it. You know what I mean? And the thing is that what you realise though is that it doesn't actually hurt that much. Do you know what I mean? And again, you've had something much, much worse. Do you know what I mean? But I think that the fear that people have of things hurting stops them from actually doing it. But when you do it, you realise that actually didn't hurt.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, I completely agree. And also, to that point, like, no one cares.
No one cares.
You I've never told that first story I told about being ill because I know no one cares.
Yeah.
Like, it's something that is interesting about me, but no one listening to this, actually, they don't care about that. It doesn't matter. Like, I used to play rugby a lot up to when I finished university. You get punched in the face all the time.
Yeah.
You don't come off the pitch and say, that guy punched me in the face.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter. You just
Because
crack on.
shut up. Everyone's been punched in the face. You know?
You just crack on. I think that's quite a good metaphor for life. Just crack on.
Well, people will have empathy, but they won't have sympathy.
No.
Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I only have sympathy for like, and I won't go into all the things that sort of were in and around my childhood, most of them self-inflicted. But the thing is that you can tell the stories. You know, you can sit there and you can go, oh no, you know, and people are, oh no, it's terrible, you know, like that. But 2 seconds later, their life continues on. Yeah. And then all the storm happens inside the head. And then they're like, that must have been terrible, but then it's gone. Yeah. You know, it's like, and this is why I say is that it's that everyone is suffering. However, I think what you were saying that's very important for people to understand is that everyone is suffering. So get on with it. Yeah. Not everyone's suffering, I can't do anything. It's that we're all suffering. Like you said, idiots at the top. They're just as dumb as you are.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean?
I think you summed it up perfectly. Literally, yeah. Everyone is suffering. Everyone's fighting their own inner demons, their own battles, and it's just a case of. I like what Gary Vee said. Like, what are you doing when no one's looking? Yeah. I think about that quite often. Like, if I get up at 6 a.m, do my steps and do a bit of work, I don't care if anyone's watching or not. You know, I've said it on a podcast now, so that's like an ego fix. But I don't care if people know or they don't know. Like, I think overnight success is something that's hit me a lot over the last 3 years of running our business. Like, people might say, "Oh, that's really cool. You've done that," or "You've whatever accolade they want to say." But it's like, yeah, but it wasn't overnight. It's because I did things when you weren't looking. You could all do things on social media or talk about it on podcasts, but what you actually do when you're behind the scenes is the most important bit. And I think that's resilience for me. Like, if you get up and you're in a bad mood and you don't do the things you should be doing, that's tough. Like, that's going to hurt you the next day. Yeah. But if you do the things that you don't want to do and it works again and again, you're consistent, you have discipline and resilience, I just think it's inevitable that you're going to win. Well, who's Chris Williamson makes that amazing monologue-y, speechy thing where I can't relay it point for point, but he's basically saying writing a list is not doing the thing. You know, talking about it is not doing the thing. Writing, you know, the only thing that's doing the thing is doing the thing. Do you know what I mean? Exactly. And it feeds into action faking. Do you know what I mean? Which is, I was very guilty of this, where it does help to write a list sometimes. I'm a to-do list king. Do you know what I mean? So it's like, write a list. Do you know what I mean? But if you don't do what's on the list, then what's the point of the list? What was the point? You just completely waste your time. So you have to do the list, and you have to actually take action against it. And it's the same thing. Watching podcasts, listening to motivational speeches, that's not doing something. It can help. Do you know what I mean? Like having putting a 5-minute motivational quoted YouTube video on,
as you're drinking a double espresso on your way to the gym really helps. But doing it, 1 o'clock in the afternoon because you're not quite, I need something to make me start.
Yeah.
It's a complete waste of time. You just have to start.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
I agree. And actually, just before I turned 30, I've always done rugby, competed a lot in CrossFit, and I did a High Rocks earlier this year as my sort of crescendo to being like, okay, at 30, I'm going to get a PT and I'm going to try to train for something else. Like not a sporting event, but just longevity, health. I wanted to get rid of my injuries. I was always getting injured in CrossFit and stuff. And so I got a PT. And the results that I've had have been incredible because I'm not in pain anymore. I think I'm fitter and I'm stronger. But the point is that what he says is that we've gone from exercising to training. I was always exercising and getting ready for sporting events. Now I'm training and it's very specific. And the point is that he tracks everything, right? So he's looking at, your body fat percentage, what you're eating, your steps, your food, whatever. And that's really, really interesting for me because it's showing. He can see if I've not done my steps. He can see if I'm not eating correctly. He can see if I've had a few beers at the pub at the weekend. And then if I say, okay, I'm not happy with my results this week, he's like, why do you think that is? You're not hiding from me anymore. You're showing, you're growing in public with him. This is what's happening. So there's data to prove you've done that, that's happened. And I think if we had that accountability for everything we did, I think we'd be very surprised at the number of things we're probably doing wrong or not towards our current goal.
Yeah, 100%. What I can tell you is that in 20 years' time, those 2 beers at the weekend, you'll still be feeling that 10 days later.
Yeah.
Because, again, going back to what you said earlier about what happened to you when you were younger and everything like this, feeds into the second thing, which I think is being overplayed, which is adversity. Do you know what I mean? And I spoke to a couple of really cool people on this podcast about this, where I'm not trying to have a pop at anybody, but I've become aware where people are trying to, let's say, in the last decade, over-egg the pudding. Do you know what I mean? The world has shifted from what I stand for to what I stand against, which is a very nuanced statement because you're still talking about the same thing. You still want the same outcome. Do you know what I mean? So you're still saying, I'm for gay rights. I'm for positive racism, stuff like this. But instead of promoting what's good and what should have value in it, people change into what's negative and everything like that. And I think it's created a narrative of overplaying adversity. Do you know what I mean? So I don't know if in the world of personal brand building, which is another buzzword which has crept up in the last 5 years or so, is that people think that in order to be worth something, I have to have suffered something. And I had a brilliant person on the podcast, Kelly Lundberg, who as well, who's massive on this. And my question to her was, what if you haven't suffered anything? And you're trying to create a personal brand, like how do people navigate that? And I wanted to get your thoughts on that for all the people you've spoke to and the things that you've done, because you don't play on adversity. Do you know what I mean?
I agree. The funniest thing you can see is the reel or the LinkedIn post of someone who hasn't got adversity and they're like, oh, I was fat, lazy and ugly. And then I found this thing and now I'm rich, famous and whatever. Do you want this thing? I completely agree. It's horrible. Gary Vee, I don't think has been through anything though. Like he just literally documents his behavior, documents what he's done. Yeah. And so I think we've had 130 guests on the podcast, most of them here in the same sort of studio. And some of them have got huge adversity they've been through. A lot of them have got the most followers or the most business, whatever you want to deem the best result. They haven't been through adversity. I don't think personal branding needs adversity. I think it's the trend of the quickest way to get there is I have suffered X, I achieved Y. That's what people think, but I really, really don't think you need that, which is why I don't play to the things that I've been through. I know that it's something that's relatively interesting, makes me different, but it doesn't define what I'm doing now. So I think if someone's listening and they're thinking about their personal brand and trying to think of how can I poison myself to then have a better story afterwards, I think you're missing the point of what a personal brand is, because a personal brand to me is a reputation that precedes you. So
I like that
You want to walk into
cool.
an industry event or walk in somewhere and they go, oh, Sam, I know you. I've listened to the podcast or whatever. That's what you're looking for. if you walk into that event and they go, "Oh, I'm really sorry that you had that car crash," you've done the
Yeah,
exact
that's the car
opposite
crash
of what.
guy.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
exactly.
Yeah,
You don't want
yeah,
anything around that. And so, yeah, I think authenticity is a buzzword, and I think it's something that people are playing up to massively, and they're actually wearing a cape of authenticity.
And I think they're going to get busted.
I hope they do. Yeah.
Like you asked me right at the beginning of this, why did I start this, and the reason I said when I started, but what I think it's turned into, and this is why I just have the biggest respect for every guest that comes on, because I don't think I understand the position I'm putting them in, where I'm saying, I'm not telling you what I'm going to ask. I'm not, I've said these things over and over again. I'm not going to tell you what I'm going to ask. I'm just, and they still turn up and they go, yeah, all right then, Yeah. I've got somebody coming on actually that is very, very, I'm actually recording it next Monday, and it's a very different style of guest that's got 1 million followers on Instagram. But she said to me, I trust you, and I've got no idea why. And I said to her, like she goes, I trust the fact that my friend's been on there and I've watched it, and I trust the fact that you're not going to clickbait will screw me over. And that I think is superb, because again, what I want this to be is people to be authentic, but it's how much is someone prepared to actually be themselves.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why in a lot of the stuff that we do with our clients, we talk about how can you put your best foot forward without having to be someone you're not. Because like I said to you before we started recording, the reason I love podcasts so much and long form content is no one can hide for an hour. We literally built up the framework for how we pick guests for our podcast based on people who ticked our boxes and then were terrible guests. And I've had to ring people who make millions of dollars or have lots of followers and say, we're not going to put that episode out because I don't think there was any value, or I don't think you were who you said you were. Or you have someone who
What
does.
was their reaction?
A lot of the time.
To you saying, because for you to say the words, I'm not sure that you are who you are, is a very, very nice way of saying, I think you're full of shit.
Yeah. Well, most of the time, it's only been a couple of times, but it helped build our framework of how we get guests on. And usually, the one time they just completely understood. They're like, okay, it wasn't that much out of my way. It's fine. I get it. I can do better next time. They actually asked for feedback, which I thought was incredibly forthcoming. Cool. The other time was a bit more, they'd taken more time out of their day. So we said, you can have all the clips. So you've got all the content, but we're not going to release it. And so it was slightly more awkward, but I think I was standing up for my audience. Because if I put something out to the audience, it's because I genuinely think it's interesting. I think you're going to love it. If that doesn't come across in the episode, I lose trust. And I'm obsessed with speaking to people who think differently and understanding what trust is, why we build it, how we decay. I think that's so important. And so I'd rather have a great guest come on than not. And so, when you build out who is a great guest for you, we started out by thinking, well, it's someone with a great story. It's someone who hopefully has a bigger following than us, because that's how trust builds. If you get one person who has a bigger following and it all integrates. But it doesn't work like that. Someone who has millions of dollars is not necessarily an interesting person. They're not necessarily an intelligent person as well. So it comes across differently. We've all heard the saying, like, there are people who are far less intelligent than you who are making a lot more money than you or a lot more successful. And I saw last week actually a different variation of that, which is there are people who are far less intelligent than you who are being told by ChatGPT every day, that's a great idea. Same thing, right?
Yeah, that's a whole other conversation. You know what I mean?
So I think it's really important to understand the difference between authenticity and putting a facade on for likes, vanity metrics, whatever, which is why a lot of speaking coaches will say to you, speak slowly, speak in this way. I speak quickly. My dad speaks quickly. My granddad speaks quickly. I am who I am, and I'm not going to change that. Because otherwise, if someone tunes into a podcast and they've met me in person or they follow my social media and they're like, why are you speaking in old English accent really slowly? It's not me. So I'm obsessed with this. Like, what does trust look like? And how does it grow?
Do you know, I'm quite good at public speaking. And I did a lot of presentations over COVID and stuff like that. And it is nerve-wracking, 100%. And I always think if you're not genuinely scared before you're going to do it, then you don't care enough about what's actually happening. With this, I think to myself, the moment that I am not very, very nervous 20 minutes before it starts, which is every single time, then I should stop doing it, because I'm about to go through the motions and I don't really care anymore, which is, I always like to be very on edge, like during the process, because I don't know, it keeps you focused. But the one thing that changed me was I listened to somebody say, the key to public speaking is the audience doesn't need to believe what you're saying. And I was like, I'm sorry, come again, you know what I mean? And he said, all the audience needs to believe is that you believe what you're saying. And it changed my entire perception, which is the difference between essentially good acting and bad acting. Great actors, you actually believe they believe exactly what they're saying. Yeah. And we can pick up on it. Humans can pick up on the fact that you're sitting there and you look like you're reeling off a load of things you've prepared. This is why I'm not a big fan of the radio and stuff like that, because everything is, you get the questions, you know, what's coming. They talk for 2 minutes and go to a break, and it's all to do with the fact that, you know, there's not enough time for you to mess this up.
Yeah.
Do you know what
in
I mean?
The same way which we would never give our podcast guests questions in advance. If they ask for it, I'll give them a line about why we don't do it. If they then don't want to come on, that's how we do it. Because if they rehearse the answers, it's the same as, like you're talking about there, radios or people that go on press junkets, you know, like different shows in the UK and the US. You're not going to get them the reality of them. And I get it, they're trying to be efficient, they're trying to get their value out there, it's their time. But you're completely right. If you see someone on stage and they have the self-belief. I mean, did you hear the newsletter or read the newsletter last week from Alex Hormozy? And he was talking about influence, how to build influence. I think he defined it so well. He has this acronym, SPECIAL, but it's SPCL. S is for status. So the example he gave is, last month I made $100 million. That's his status. The P is for power, but we'll come back to that. The C is for credibility. So I made $100 million last month is the status. I have 50 clients who also made $100 million last month from what I taught them. That gives you credibility. Both of those together give you power, which is the P. And then there's the L, which is likeness. So the example would be, if we had both made $100 million, you
which
and I.
would be nice.
Yeah. And our clients had both made $100 million in the same month, someone will follow you over me just because they resonate with you better, or they like you. They see themselves in you more. That's how that works. So if you have all four of those, you have influence, and influence is defined as the likelihood of you following or obeying an order or instruction. And I just think that is such a good way of looking at it, because it's true, and you can fill in the gaps of status and credibility and power however you like, but it does make sense that if you see someone on stage, to your point, and they have those things, you resonate with them, they've got that status, they have the self-belief and confidence, you are more likely to follow them towards whatever it is they want you to follow.
Well, it boils down to passion, I think, when it comes to talking, when it comes to presenting, when it comes to making a point, which is, if you're very, very passionate about what you're doing, and it's almost like there's a very fine line between passion and anger, you know?
Yeah.
So in so many walks of life, passion can turn to anger. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I will come back to Alex Hormozy points. I think it highlights an interesting thing I thought about. But it's where I always say to people, weaponize your anger. So don't get angry. But when you feel yourself, understand that when someone's angry, right? We've all been angry, and we've all received anger, especially in relationships and everything like this. See how focused and on point what you're saying is against and what is being said to you, that no one skips a word, no one misses a beat. Most times in super anger, people don't even swear. They're just dumping down the facts of why what you have said or how I'm feeling, and it just comes out in a way. And at the end of it, everyone kind of goes, then the adrenaline goes the other way, and they're like, oh, I'm really sorry, I was so angry. And it's like, but understand that when you get super passionate, it refines all the fluff away, and you can just deliver, you know. And I think people maybe don't acknowledge that enough. If you can get really into what you're doing, as I seem to be right now saying this, people are going to go, oh, he really believes that.
He loves it.
I mean? Sounds a very angry person. I'm not, I'm beautiful.
What I think is really interesting, so my last year at business school, I did a economics master's degree. And one of the things that the last year you had to do was just a presentation to a lot of people about anything you want.
Yeah.
So the point there is that they're just trying to be like, what are your presentation skills like? How can you develop? You had a very short time to do it. I think you had 2 hours to prepare, just crack on in front of a whole lecture hall. And I didn't really like doing presentations at that time. I'd gone from school to uni. The only presentations were in front of my classmates. I didn't really like it. So I did the presentation on why I didn't like presentations, or why people don't like presentations, which I thought was interesting, right? And
That's
so
awesome.
what I came up with was passion was a great one. Passion was a massive one. It makes it a lot easier if you're more passionate. But also, this comes back to authenticity. A presentation is a lot easier to give, or a speech, whatever it is, if you believe that you know more about the topic than the people you're listening.
Yeah.
I've completely butchered the way I've said that, but that's
no,
the way
but
it
you
works.
are 100% spot on.
Because if you're at school, for example, or university, and I'm in an economics lecture, and I'm speaking about economics to a panel of doctors of economics, I don't know as much as them.
Yeah.
So you're going to be so nervous. If I'm speaking to a panel of economics professors about the rules of rugby in England, I'm going to be confident. I could even wear a rugby kit. It doesn't matter. You can't embarrass me because I know more than you. And I think that comes across quite well in your authenticity piece. If someone's nervous about something, or they haven't got the self-belief, perhaps they haven't got the value that they think they have. Perhaps they haven't got the experience. Perhaps they're self-doubting themselves that actually they're not as good as they are. But then that could be are you actually doubting, or is it the truth?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot to be said around that.
No, 100%. I mean, people have probably said this to you. They said it to me during my career, which is, you speak so well, you gave great presentation. And I try and say, it's only because I actually know what I've put on the screen and how I want to deliver it through focusing on it, practicing on it, obsessing over it, running it over in my head, etc., etc. You give me another side of this industry, saying hotels about room rates and rooms. I know nothing.
Yeah.
You tell me to give a presentation on that, you're going to see a completely different person.
Yeah, exactly.
You really are going to see I won't actually do it.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Because I just stand there, and like you said, I'm going to be convinced that the people I'm presenting to are going to see through this like a window.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
And I learned, so I literally did that presentation, and then I was doing a master's full-time alongside of my first full-time corporate job. And my first full-time corporate job was at a pub company in the southwest of the UK.
Yeah.
Absolute dreamboat. You get free beer vouchers every year.
Yeah, brilliant.
So there was 200 pubs in this pub company. Every single pub does over $1 million a year. So it's £200 million businesses, which is quite cool to look at the different stuff. And I was their first performance analyst. So I'd come in, my job was to look at the data, present back each week on the findings, where we could increase margins, how you can make more money for the group, but also obviously individual pubs. And so I have to go into the boardroom every week for the exec meeting, and there'd be the CEO and a few board members. Obviously once a quarter, there'd be the full set of boards, full board, sorry, all the non-execs and stuff, and all the directors. And I'd go in there, and I was 23 or 24. But I was the only person that was doing this job. So I'd go in there, even though I know they know a lot more about business than me and they're more confident, I'm the only one with the data. So whilst it's been double checked by other people, I can still stand up there and say, okay, if we clean these beer lines this much less a month, we will get 4 more pints out of the pipe, times 200 pubs, times 300 lines. That stuff I start to build up confidence. I thought a lot back about my presentation at uni about why am I not struggling here as much? It's just because people are then asking you questions after as well. They believe what you're saying. So you have confidence there. And then stuff is actually working. So you have validation. So if I'm saying we should do something, they're saying, okay, cool, brilliant, thanks for that. We'll try it. The next week they come back, we did that, made us some money. What's the next thing? So you start to layer up credibility. And that was my first real experience of public speaking not being quite as terrifying as I thought it was.
Well, it's because you're not being fake. You're not going to try and cut corners.
Yeah.
Which anyone that tries to cut corners in public speaking gets exposed big time.
Yeah, exactly.
I did want to quickly come back to the Alex Hormozi point that you made.
Sure.
And again, the term authenticity as well, because obviously you spoke to tons and tons of people and you sort of live in this world. And the thing is that I often think that and it's actually a massive catch-22. So you're supposed to have role models, right? So kids are supposed to have role models. You want to have good role models, you want to have bad role models, whatever, right? But you're supposed to have a role model. Then you go from having a role model to a business coach. And business coaching is huge at the moment. But it's always you trying to focus on becoming somebody else. Is that now having a what's the right word? Is it counterintuitive almost that here I am trying to become Elon Musk, which I'm not, but here I am trying to become Elon Musk because Elon Musk is the world's richest man as a businessman, this, X, Y, Z. But I'm actually not Elon Musk. So now I'm trying to look and talk and speak and act, and now personal branding comes along, so I have to put it on all these channels and have to say, but this is where you're saying it's exhausting.
Yeah.
It's a struggle. I go long form. I look like an idiot. When really the key to all this is to look at the role model's drive, possibly, not who they are as a person, not their personality, but their actual ability to get it done.
Yeah, I completely agree. Their ability to get it done, their personality, but also what they're trying to do. So, candidly, one of the things that I still don't like about our podcast is that I think when I started the podcast, I looked at who are the great podcasters from the UK that I really like, and I liked the way that Stephen Bartlett did it in the early days because it was CEOs, it was business focused. It's not anymore. I don't really listen anymore. But the point was that I liked the way he did it, and so we set ours up very similar to him, which is why over the years it's had to now change, and I'm now thinking about rebranding it because it's become something that I don't think I necessarily am. It was very tactical over the last 10 episodes, and I love the guests and I think it's super valuable, but I think there's something more that I'm interested in. And I think with the whole personal branding world, you've got to be careful that you are asking mentors for strategies and tactics to solve a short-term problem, and you're asking people who have achieved what you want to achieve in their life, how they did it in a separate conversation. So I'm very, very picky with mentors, fitness mentors, business mentors, podcasts, whatever it might be. I'm very picky because if someone's built a massive podcast, but they work 22 hours a day and they spend 10K a week on ads, that's not me. I'm not interested in the vanity. I'm not interested in the fame. I want to go after someone who is building a lifestyle, has a family that I would like to build, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So with the coaching side, yes, I think it's really important to look at someone who has achieved the thing and can get you the short-term goal. That's the way to hack and take the corners, cut the corners. On the other side of things, with a sort of a lifestyle sensei, coach, mentor, whatever, I think the way to do it is you have to look at what their long-term vision is. Because a lot of business coaches, they're just collecting cash. They just want the cash. And so you're not going to get the long-term support you want. And I think that's the same with friendship and with all relationships. The quality of relationship equals happiness thing that I mentioned earlier. If I've got a business coach who doesn't resonate with me, I'm not going to get a lot out of them.
Do you think that, because we're nearly there. It's remarkable. I feel like we could do like 4 hours.
Easy.
You know what I mean? It's like it actually popped into my head. I was like, have I actually asked Freddie any of the questions I wrote down that I might actually want to ask him? And I don't think I have. But you talk a lot about relationships between people, having a purpose, having to have things you want to work for. Do you know what I mean? Not being materialistic and all of this stuff. And again, coming back to the fact that I'm 19 years older than you. So in many parts of the UK, you could be my son. Mm-hmm. Do you know what I mean? Which is, there you go. There's a slight dig at a lot of parts of England in that one. But I wanted to ask, what is your current opinion on the way the world is going with technology? Not so much, I don't want to be like, go AI or anything like that. But what I mean is that I'm turning 50, right, next year. And it's the new 40, right? But the thing is, I'm turning 50 next year. And I look at it where I'm thinking, if this goes that way, where these tools start to take everything, like I'm negotiating with somebody to do a podcast with somebody's AI twin, which I think would be absolute. And we're in an email conversation. It's a real thing. It's a real thing. And I actually want the person and the twin, there. So it's like, I want people to see that I'm not looking at a screen I don't know how it's going to work, but a screen or something. And then there's somebody over there going,
oh, that's cool. Yeah.
But then I'm like, do you want to watch a podcast between two people that are not really there? And all of this stuff. But what my bigger, most important question is, the first thing is, do you think all relationships are being eroded, right? With the fact that everyone is being pushed more and more into devices. Like they said, the number one reason for people using ChatGPT is almost as therapists, which I think is really fucking dangerous, to be honest with you. But the second thing is that you're 30. And now I'm thinking, if I can survive the next 10 years and make as much money as possible, hopefully I can sit back in in an element of security financially, whilst everyone else goes on basic income and everything like this, which essentially is like saying you're all going on the dole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you're 30. Like, what do you look at over the next 20, 30 years? How are you looking at life and business and mapping out what you want to achieve when there could be a situation come along, I don't know, that really drastically changes that? I don't know.
Well, I think it's really exciting. I think you have to, at my age, I have to look at it as exciting. Because if I look at it as nothing's going to work in 20 years' time, what's the point? I've said for a long time that I think YouTube is going to become the new TV.
Yeah.
And I think that there's going to be a massive resurgence in the high street across the world.
You do?
Massive.
Oh, I bloody hope so.
Because we've all been, like, online shopping was such a cool thing 10 years ago. You can shop online now. How cool is that? And I think what's actually happening is we are losing the community and the relationships that, like we've spoken about for a lot of this podcast, we need, we want, we look for. There's a lot of data coming out in the last week or so about how young people are literally looking at Christmas presents, which are old school toys again. They don't want as many. The pre-orders have gone down for digital tech, and they've gone up for old school toys. There are a lot of places which are doing, digital detoxes, schools, restaurants. You put your phone, cinemas, you put your phone away. People are looking for that. And so I genuinely do think that people are going to become more valuable. I still think that we're going to be looking at personal brands, but I think it'll be the ones that are actually building trust with others that will work better. So, for example, I don't know if you saw this data that the most trusted influencers, quote unquote, in order, something like short form of TikTok are last. Then you've got like a sort of slightly longer form. So rather than like 30 seconds, you've got 90 seconds. This is very obvious to you when I say it. Then YouTubers, I probably missed one there. The most trusted are streamers. Streamers who go live for 6 to 8 hours a day, every day, and you follow their lives. People like iShowSpeed and these guys, because you're so ingrained in their life. Why did Big Brother in the UK do so well as a TV program? Yeah. Because you just watch people, or is it My Family or The Family? You just watch people go around their life, and what happens is you build a connection with them. And I'm really into this idea and this notion of trust. And I think, imagine we all have 100 trust points. So imagine I came into this studio today. You have 100 trust points with me. I trust you 100%. You have to keep up stuff for me to keep that trust level there. You have to be congruent with who I thought you were when we spoke a month ago and we met up, whatever. Yeah. Those trust points drop really, really quickly. And that's trust decaying. So it's the same in business, the same in personal branding. If I had 1 million followers on Instagram about how amazing and sporty and clever I am, and in real life I'm a fat mess, I lose those trust points. And I think that trust decay is what we need to be very aware of over the next 10, 20 years. And obviously, in reality, we don't start with 100 trust points. You start with 0, maybe 10 or 20. So you have to build them up first and then stop them from decaying. So it could be 2 steps forwards, 1 step back. And I think understanding those 100 points of trust is what's going to define the difference between success and failure in the personal branding sort of founder-led space.
Do you think that, that's so interesting. Do you know what I mean? Because the trust element is, do you think that, it's probably quite a deep philosophical question, do you know what I mean? But do you think that the human race or human nature is going to go on to reject tech? What I mean by that is I've made this point to many people before, which is like, you want to do business with somebody. So it used to be we do business in a different country. So I have to phone you up on the telephone. Do you know what I mean? Not the telephone. Get on a plane, fly out there, drive to your office, sit in front of your face, get it done, sign it, then you give me money, right? Yeah. Then it's turned into, let's get on Zoom and Skype and transfer the money over line and everything like this. Yeah. Now I'm on Zoom and my background looks different. Do you know what I mean? And everything like that. Now we could move into a moment of talk to my AI avatar. Do you know what I mean? And I'm wondering what will be the breaking point where something happens where somebody gets scammed big time and then everyone just goes, I want you in my office. Get on a plane, fly over here, and I want to see your face, you know, and everything like that. And as much as the tech companies think we're going to love all of this novelty thing that's going on, authenticity, fakeness, followers, bullshit, nonsense, I'm not who I say I am. Do you know, people, I do believe we will hark back to just go, I just want to see you. I just want to talk to you.
There are people...
And I'll make my own mind up.
Exactly.
You know.
There are people far smarter than me who have, I think, shown us what the future might look like through film. So if you think about iRobot, think about Star Wars, think about Harry Potter, but think of the magic as tech. In those 3 films, you have everything you could need in terms of technology to do things for you. But they all still cook their own food. They get trains. They still do very much community-based things, and they have very, very normal elements that we can resonate with. I think that's where we're going to get to, where technology becomes far more regulated for the reasons you just said, that we're getting scammed, we're losing connection, we realise we haven't been outside for 30 days because the bot went and got us shopping for us and picked the kids up. And I think we will crave that individuality, that contact, and that zero tech lifestyle. And I think that's where we'll go.
Do you know what actually just popped into my head? Which is a really good... So they talk about universal basic income. So therefore, we don't go to work anymore. We all sit at home. Governments give you money. Enjoy yourselves. Okay? Now, we've just been through a period for about a year to 18 months to 2 years all over the world where that kind of happened. No one could go to work. Everyone had to sit at home. Governments gave out some money. Do you know what I mean? And look what happened then. Like, everybody knows that the amount of damage that actually did to everybody, just because we could not go outside, we could not live our lives, we could not go to work, we could not have a purpose. It's like...
And look at the kids who were born in that time, or who went through very important developmental times.
The ones who did their GCSEs.
Yeah, exactly. Or I've got nephews and nieces who born in 2017, 2018, and so they missed out on 3 years of incredibly important developmental time. And I just wonder what the impact will be on them in 10 or 20 years' time. Maybe it won't be, but I would hazard a guess that there will be something in there where they've lost out a little bit.
Do you know, I think human beings are very adaptable. So I think that that everyone got everyone through it, and then we look back at it and we go, that can never happen again. And what I hope people acknowledge is that if we are all going to sit at home and get money, that is not utopia. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. This is why I think marketing in this day and age and going forward is so interesting, because obviously information is free. So it's now a question of, well, which information do you trust? And again, so people are like, the coaching business, the coaching model's gone. Well, the implementation model hasn't, and you still have to trust someone's information to implement something. So then it becomes much more important to just be trusted, which is why we're seeing this shift to long form content, because I not only don't trust someone through short form content, I actively don't like them, because I think this is not real. This is fake. In the same way that everyone comes to Dubai, gets a gold Rolex, rents a Lamborghini, takes some pictures and goes, I've got a course on Forex trading. You're going after a certain type of market, which is probably always going to be there. But a lot of people have grown out of that now. It's not going to work anymore. And I think that's good. That's where we're having to challenge what marketing actually is, you know. And I'm fascinated by things like when Antonia wants to go and buy something, and I say, why do you want to buy that? Where did that come from? She's like, I saw an influencer do this, or I saw this on this advert. I just think it's so interesting to see how easy or not easily we can be influenced to buy something in this day and age, and then why? Like, why do you trust that person so much that if they talk about this new gym wear brand, you need to go and at least just try it? Like, why is that happening?
It's not going to make you train any harder.
Exactly. It's all about its connection.
Still a pair of shorts.
Yes, still a pair of shorts. Not going to run any faster.
Well, look, Freddie, this has been really cool. I kind of knew it was going to go this way, because when we Zoomed that one time before we did this, I think it was 40 minutes into the conversation, I then just said, so what do you do? Because we're just immediately off on this massive spiral, which has just resonated here, which is great. But we have come to the end. It has been really awesome. I'm really, really happy with this. It's brilliant. But as with all Taste of Humans guests, you know, I do try to ask that one question. given everything you've been through, and I don't even know if we ever spoke about anything that correlated into an actual theme or a message, but if there's one thing you want to sort of leave on the table through all your life experiences so far, and the reason I ask this is I always ask some of the most inspirational people that I ever worked for, if you could only tell me one thing about this industry, what could it be? And it stops people in their tracks and goes, right, okay, like if I could only say one thing, one piece of advice about life or business or whatever, what would it be? What would yours be?
So mine would probably be my favorite quote, which is, "The day the blind man sees is the last day he picks up his stick." And to me, I remember my granddad telling me when I got my first corporate job, never burn bridges. Always think about the value of everything you're leaving in your wake, because you can benefit from that. They can benefit from you. There's so much value to be had in not burning bridges, not just tossing things to the side when you think you're done with them. I think that bit of advice has sat with me for a long time and benefited me and my relationship and my business more than I could even articulate. So that would be my bit of advice.
Fantastic. Freddie, thank you so much for coming on. I've really, really enjoyed it.
Thank you for having me.
I
Awesome.
hope you learned a lot about me as well.
I did. I love it. Thank you so much for having me on.
Have a great day.
You too.